I just want to clarify, I'm a medical doctor and I'm also a psychologist. This is my daughter who's a lawyer. So, those people who just happen to come in, and you're welcome to stay and listen to this talk. Siguro after Easter, ito na lecture on this topic na gagawin ko after Easter. Yeah. The topic is malawak. So, actually, I'd be comfortable na discuss lahat in a today's seminar. But we only have 2 hours, and we have to end properly because I think there's an activity afterwards. So, my daughter and I decided to we will take around 45 minutes each para may comment form pagkatapos. Pero that means sa maraming gusto namin pag-usapan, hindi lang talaga kami ng mga sasabihin namin medyo mas importante. So what I will cover with you, ang topic of course RH bill, no? What's wrong with the RH bill? What I will cover with you are the things not written in the bill. Alright? Kasi, and my daughter will talk about the bill itself. Kasi kung minsan, magulo yung usapan. Kasi, hindi ka tatapin yung mga paniwala at mga assumptions behind the bill. Para makaisip yung magbasa ng isang bill na ito, meron kang mga beliefs, meron kang mga beliefs, meron kang mga assumptions. Dahil hindi niya yun yung dahilan, bakit tayo nagkasa bill, diba? Ngayon, ang gusto ko ipakita, yung mga beliefs and assumptions, maraming mali. So, it is my position, there should not be any RH bill at all kasi it's based on wrong assumptions. Maski ano gawin mo doon, modify, adjust, it can only go so far in adjusting it, please whoever, but it cannot go beyond a certain limit kasi mababayan tayo ng assumptions and beliefs that are under the bill. So, ang una natin bakit kailangan nila magpasa ng bill nito? The main objective of the bill is to control population. Put simply, alright? It is through the widespread use of contraceptives that they will control population. So, maraming mga reasons silang ilalagay, no, for the benefit of women, etc. Hindi yun ang main reason. Main reason, control population. So, in the guise of promoting health. And as I said, it has wrong assumptions which are already proven. No? At napakita na ng facts, ng tao all over the world, na yung assumptions na kung may tao sa inyo ay mali. No? So everything we will say here will be a reference. It's so easy. Google lang nyo yung mga reference. But later I go to PC and give you a website and you can get all the references. Next. So, one of the first assumptions of the RH bill is that contraceptives are good for mankind and good for women. Ito po ang assumption niya. Kasi kung hindi niya pinagpagpalaan yun, hindi niya ipupush yun, diba? Bakit niya kailangan i-legislate yun? Ginagawa naman ng mga tao. Libre naman silang gumamit ng contraceptives. Kailangan pa gawin doon. So, meron silang paniwala na good ito for mankind. Pero, the truth is, contraceptives are harmful. Ipakyan mamaya. The truth is, contraceptives remove the barriers to premarital and extramarital sex. So, it is harmful to society. Okay? Because unpermitted sexual relationships cause psychological problems. Cause conflicts in intimate relationships, in marriage, encourage people to go into relationships when they are not ready. spread. So I will go to that shortly. And it destroys others. Next. Other wrong assumption. So, the other thing wrong in contraceptives is they can be aborted, some of them. And then blocking the possibility of pregnancy during the fertile period is against the natural moral law. We know that it's also immoral. And then, so it will destroy the Filipino value of life. Masisira ang ating Filipino values, which is so much part of our culture. Next. So the RH bill is actually anti-life. So life claims to protect health is completely widespread use, which I already said, abortives, dangerous to health, psychic morals, and ineffective in preventing STDs and So to summarize what's wrong with the contraceptives, yun. Some are abortives, some are dangerous to health, psychic morals, the others are ineffective anyway. All of them are ineffective. Next. So, another wrong assumption is, if we promote contraceptives, it will lessen abortions. So, actually, you should realize that when you read sa Jaro, masyado nalaman tayo sa ang dami na abortions sa Pilipinas. Actually, hindi. Abortion is bad, and you should never have abortion. So, hindi ganun kadami abortion compared to the United States, for example. It's sort of dramatized a bit, so that the reader will feel compelled, oh, dapat mag-contraceptive nila, it's a lesser evil. Contraceptive is not a lesser evil. It is in itself evil, even if it's not abortive. However, it is also proven by the facts that the certain contraceptives don't lessen the incidence of abortion. Because we know, first of all, that contraceptives are not 100% foolproof. So the consent of same-sex encourage people to go into sex, and then if there's pregnancy, they cannot accept that. So the next step is abortion. Yung tentation na hindi ko dapat mag-release, tapos nag-fail yung contraceptive. The next step is abortion. So, separating sex from procreation develops in the person ang tinatawag na anti-life environment. Nakita na natin sa Amerika na ang tagal-tagal na sa Amerika, widespread use ng contraceptive. Bakit ang daming-daming abortion? What's your best rule? What's happening in the US? Maraming nagko-contraceptive, maraming abortion. Next. So, RH bill is anti-marriage, anti-woman. So, it promotes promiscuity because hindi na natakot kung mabundis, hindi daw takot kung may STD, false reassurance yun. I wish you short. Sex of the man, mostly is the women are used by men. Pwede sex of the man. Pagka-contraceptive babae, so pwede siyang gamitin. And the health risks of contraceptives both are assumed by the woman. Hindi naman lalaki yung risk ng woman. So it's anti-woman because the woman assumes all the risks of this chemical if it's hormonal contraceptive. Next. RH bill is anti-family because, as I said already, pregnancy is so dreaded, as though there's no more life, there's no more quality of life after pregnancy. So there's reliance that welcome the family. It promotes materialism because sometimes people compare life versus benefits they will get if they don't have children as though equal with comparison. Next. So I know also the first assumption I was talking is that contraceptives are good. So mali assumption. The second assumption I'm talking is that the world is overpopulated and the Philippines is overpopulated. Mali assumption. Next, that population growth is bad and that there will come a time when we will run out of food. They blame population for all the problems of the world. Pag may climate change, kasi population. Pagka ang dami pollution, kasi population, no? So, there are respectable scientists who question these conclusions. You can Google all of that. This is the debate. Population growth down causes poverty. Again, wrong assumption. because they can demonstrate it in the experience of countries. The solution to poverty is economic. That's an economic problem. The solution is economic. Poverty is caused by corruption and ineffective government policies. And people are valuable resources and produce wealth through their creativity and industriousness. People are not burdened. Recently I was so delighted to see a Citigroup report where they said that somebody said there that the Philippines is very promising because it's a young population and has lots of people. Can you imagine? And here we are, we want to lessen number of people. That's our most important resource. Next. So I'm going, pagtsatsadaan natin ito, ito yung gusto niyo makikita sa inyo. Ito di ba, the population growth is bad. This is what I mean. Me particularly, because I'm focused on the sex education, but I've been lecturing on all the issues since 20 years ago. Recently, I've briefed one congressman on something. My companions also go on one meeting. But there are still many congressmen who have heard. We don't have the funds to gather them into a seminar. But the people who are pushing our age are so heavily funded. They can rent a nice function room and pay they can give it for the policeman in there and have their seminars to promote our age. It's almost over. For some reason, it's already in the plenary session. I think PC can answer that later. On May 9, they will resume. And they're ready to vote this month. It was just for the vigilance of a lot of pro-life people that every time they're about to vote in, many people go there, and make their presence felt. There's also some divine intervention, like there was one day na sira na the aircon. But they're ready to vote in. We are praying very hard because of May 9, they will compete again. And the only thing what we're doing here is informing people. So that when something like the cardinal calls mass action, sana naman ito yun lang, siyempre, last time, sabi nila mga 300,000 natin, sabi sa Jari 40,000. Media is not enough. So anyway, look at this, no? This is the Philippines population pyramid in 1990. Okay? Pagtsatsadaan natin, ano? Yung sa kanan, female, sa kaliwa, male. Tapos, each horizontal bar is the age group. So, we call a cohort, no? So, the 0 to 4 years old, yung pinaka-bottom bar is green, and then 5 to 9 years old, 10 to 14, etc. Yung pinaka-top, 80 years old yun. So, nire-represent niya kung ilang tao by sex and by age. So, ang ganda-ganda ng ating population for maraming bata. Pagkatapos itong mga bata, siyempre, every year, 1 year older, mag-move out sa bar, di ba? So, pagdating doon sa 15 to 60 years old, no, let me try. Nag-word siya. So, I want to show paano maganda yung population pyramid 1990. Kasi yung 15 years old to 60 years old, marami siya. Yun yung working force natin. So, marami tayong naka-age group who are supporting our economy, who are supporting. So, ito yung 50, 60, And they can, konti lang yung matatanda. So maraming nasa-support ng children, madali lang naman talaga ng bata. No? And alam mo yung bata, tatanda sa agriculture ng workforce. At marami rin nasa-support ng matatanda. Kasi konti lang yung matatanda, maraming nag-enter ng workforce. Next. You're not just leaving it. So the next, 1995, ganun pa rin. Next, 2000, ganun pa rin. Pero next, 2008 pa rin. Next, 2005, medyo nag-narrow ko, 2010, napansin nyo, medyo hindi na siya ngayon. Medyo kumapag yung days. Although okay pa rin siya. We're there after leaders kumapate, pero it's still a good population here. So there's enough people who are in the working age to support those who cannot work. Next, I will show you Italy. Ito yung population picture ng Italy where there's heavy use of contraceptives, they are very vigorous in population control. Look at the babies, no? Kumonte. Tapos, ito siguro dati yung babies nila, naging working force na, dati na nila, working force. Pero nakakatakot ito, kasi every year pakonti yan ng pakonti, tapos ang bigat-bigat dito sa taas, sila ang magdadalagon. Okay, next. Italy. Next. 2008, there. This is scary. And look, ito, nagtatrabaho nga sila, pero pagkatanda nila, marami pa rin sila kung hindi nila susunod na workforce. Again, next. There. Next. Next. Japan. See, Japan, since before kami, because remember lang ako, alam ko na they use abortion na lang. But their main method for population control is abortion. And I just found out also Japan is one of the heaviest numbers for population. Ayoko isipin, pero hindi ko mahalap ito na yung disaster sa kanila. Doon sa taas, ang tagal-tagal na nilang nag-apoy at nagpapat sila din. Pero ganun yung nakakatakot din mo, kung nakumilis nila, ganun din ako ulit. Kaya diba, every population sa Japan, madalas na nag-aalaga ng mga nag-aalaga kasi konti lang yung mga bata. This one is already less than before. HA, ang dati, mas marami pa kasi sa war. Next, 2005, yan, dati pa dati. Next, 2010, so many things are going on. And we have almost things coming in. What we have done. Next, and we project many things. Elderly, tapos and you know, that kind of picture, gusto mo hindi siya. Kasi yung mga nagtatrabaho, teka nga muna, alin na namin mabayad ng taxes para pumunta sa mga medyo sa matatanda. Hirap na kami. Yan, walang mapasok na, patayin mo lang sila. Wala na sila sila. Madaling mangyari mo, konting utang na lang lang. Ikaw man anti-life na kahit na, konting utang na lang sila. Next, Singapore, ito nakakatawa. Kasi sa Singapore, hindi kumonte, tapos na-realize nila, teka, mali yata ito. And so they try to increase their population, kaya tumadami naman. Next, kaya hindi naman tumadami naman. They try their best to reverse the effects of population control. Next, pero you cannot escape this fact, meron na kumonti na naman kasi once you are effective in making people accept contraceptives, that's the changing values. Mahirap po pa naman yan. can reverse the changing values. It's not as simple as bukas, kung anti-life clinical, bukas o better na, hindi yan nangyari na gano'n. Yes. So, 2003, umama na naman, it's not maganda kasi. So, dumadami. At saka masunurin sila. They're effective, no? And reversible. But you can't ignore this marami dito. Ang tumandaya marami. Next, they're three cohorts na nakaganda. And next, that's the word by 2020. Next. So, we talk about fertility rate. Ang fertility rates, the number of children that a woman will have in her lifetime. So, ang replacement level, 2 point something. Ibig sabihin, para ma-replace yung ina at yung ama, dapat dalawa yung anak. Diba? Replacement level 1. Pagka less than 2, hindi na ma-replace yung ama at ina. And you go on extinction mode na. Okay? The Philippines, so as you can see, etong Singapore, Japan, Italy, they're below already. They're already there. Year 2000, they're already in the replacement rate 2. Ang Pilipinas, per 3 pa lang, no? Pero pababa lang tayo. So our fertility rate is going down from 4. Important ba? Alam mo nyo ang to 7 children. Ayaw ka nila 4, gano'n. For many reasons, tumukha na rin yung number of children per family ngayon. And we are at around 3 point something basically, which is fertility rate, which is just right. Now, we don't want that to go any lower. Kasi pala tayo yung isa, diba? Nakakatakot. So the other countries, the developed countries were really controlling population figures at ang extinction mo. Kaya natatawag na sila sa akin. Kasi magagawa ko. Next. Wait. Skip that. Okay. For a while. You know, there is a case report in 1974. You can Google that. Henry Kissinger report, 1974. He made a report on national security, and he said that growing population of some developing countries are dangerous to their national security. And therefore, America must go on a vigorous program to have all these countries identified early to strongly suppress the population. Kasali doon ang Philippines. Report yun, no? Doon sa 13 countries, nagsucceed na sila sa 12, kahit na wala pa silang RH law, kahit na. But it is really in their plan to have a global agenda, globally, that population will be controlled vigorously, especially in nations that are not so developed. So to summarize, what's wrong? The passage of the RH bill will put the Filipino at risk for extinction. Eventually lead to imbalance in the population structure where there will be a larger elderly population, few younger adults to support them, and lessen our most valuable resource, our people. And then next, the other point, the passage of RH bill will promote a wide-scale contraceptive mentality and corruption of the meaning of sex, which will bring about a culture of death seen in first world countries who have promoted contraceptives and population control. So these are the two main wrong assumptions that I'm pointing out. The next set of slides I will show you, I just want to go a little bit more coconut pag-contraceptives, no? Para I will not show everything. I will be to stop. I'll just show some of the effects of the contraceptives, just to drum home the point that it is wrong to think that they are okay to get this go. Okay. Next. Okay, so the types of artificial contraceptives we're talking about, there are hormonal, pills, and injectables. I think I can describe you. And then we have mechanical contraceptives, IUD, diaphragm, blocks, and then we have surgical by toleration, vasectomy, and immunological. At their time, they're working out para mapakuna ka pa rin case because you'll develop antibodies against your own reproductive products. So these are samples of the contraceptive pills. They come in many forms. Usually a contraceptive pill is composed of either estrogen alone, estrogen and progesterone, or progesterone alone. They are hormones. Next. So there, combined estrogen and progesterone alone. And pill is not the only preparation for hormonal therapy. Next. So, the mechanism of action of hormonal contraceptive is that first, the cervical mucus, kasi nag-inject ka ng hormone, which normally your body naman produces, but then you're introducing to the woman at a different level that she normally produces. And at a timing that we not follow, not normal timing of her body. So the cervical mucus consistency prevents the sperm from going through. So that's one way it prevents pregnancy. Na hindi makadaan ng sperm sa mucus kasi iba yung consistency. The other way it prevents pregnancy is it inhibits follicle development and ovulation. So yung ugat ng babae, doon nagde-develop yung excess. Tapos yung follicle na nag-help mag-mature doon. So if a person is taking contraceptives, yung follicle development na-hamper, so hindi nagmamature yung excess, hindi nag-ovulate. So the second mechanism of action of hormonal contraceptives to prevent ovulation. But the newer contraceptives really sometimes don't prevent ovulation because pinabaan nila sobra yung dose. The first generation of contraceptives, masyadong mataas yung dose. Kaya ang daming side effects ng babae na so binabaan ng artificial drugs. But because of the lower dose, sometimes nagkakaroon ng ovulation pa rin ng babae. So bakit hindi pa rin siya nabubuntis? Kasi may third mechanism of action where it renders the uterus unsuitable for implantation. Kasi yung estrogen ang nagpe-prepare ng uterus for possible pregnancy. So kung pinakialaman mo yung level of estrogen, hindi na tama yung environment, yung uterus, no? Hindi na tama yung kanyang status for possible pregnancy. Hindi makakabit yung embryo. So, hindi alam ng babae na na-abort pala siya, akala niya nag-against siya. So, the hormonal contraceptive can act in 3 ways to prevent the sperm from entering, to prevent ovulation, or to prevent implantation. Now, a woman doesn't know when it's acting as an abortive or when it's acting as preventative in ovulation. So, they say in your body life, you don't take hormonal contraceptives, it might abort. But even if it doesn't abort, I said earlier, contraceptive by itself goes against the natural oral law of blood because it impedes, it separates the union of bodies from the procreating effect. Next, the other side, marami side effects on each side, you just get any physician test reference, any exhaustive pharmacology textbook, makikita niyo lahat, no? Cardiovascular disease, especially in women, is smoking, and especially prolonged use in those over 35 years of age, increased risk of breast cancer, increased risk of hypertension. Can you imagine if you distribute contraceptives and the public health scale, yung incidence ng all the side effects, yung multiply, kasi marami kang bibigyan. There's also other things like weight gain, nausea, flushing, dizziness, depression, or irritability, skin changes such as acne or increased pigmentation, and no menstruation when you stop the pill, some women don't menstruate for a while. Now the next is the IUD. It's a little plastic thing that is inserted in the uterus, and there is a thread hanging out in case the doctor wants to remove it now. Next. These are the types of IUDs. It's very flexible and so when it comes in an applicator, when it's inserted, then that's when it takes its form. Next. So the mechanism of action, it prevents the sperm from eating the egg, kasi may obstacle course of sperm, hindi siya basta makapunta dun sa fallopian tube where the egg cell will be waiting for the sperm. But it also prevents implantation. So again, it's an award here. It doesn't really prevent pregnancy. I remember when I was PGH, we would deliver babies with the IUD. So the baby, tapos kasama yung IUD. So why is it that in some, hindi nagkaka-pregnant? Kasi hindi maka-implant. Bakit? Hindi maka-implant si embryo. Because there's a foreign body effect, no? Iba tayo, pagkakuwing lang tayo, magkuha-kuha tayo, malagyan lang tayo ng splinter, mag-medisyon, isang kuha, mag-nanag yun, but the foreign body, and also, you expect, insert something like that in the woman's body. It's gonna cause infection. The uterus might start contracting. The uterus will produce toxins, no? Trying to expel whatever foreign body there is. It could also even expel the embryo. So, then, therefore, it prevents implantation. It can also cause ectopic pregnancies, which are so near fatal, meaning a pregnancy will happen not in the right place. And then, you get those other things like updates, dysphoria, infertility. Photo. 10 to 30% failure rate due to breakage, slippage, manufacturing defects caused by storage in hot or cold temperature, in the Pilipinas, baka mamaya ito, hindi na okay, does not adequately stop transmission of STDs, no? I think those of you who have attended these kinds of lectures have heard this already, na may micropores, rubber na condom, meron siyang mga maliit na holes. Tapos yung hole, ang size ng HIV virus, mas maliit kung sa microholes ng condom. Kaya makakadahan pa rin sa HIV virus. Hindi siya talaga nakakaprotect. Pero, tandaan din ninyo, HIV is not the only STD. There are other STDs not prevented by condoms at all, like human papillomavirus, the HPV. No? So that one, you can get that skin contact. So there are like 10 or so other STDs. We're only focusing on HIV or AIDS virus, but that's the only thing that the person can acquire. So yung voice security ng tao na pupondong kasi maliwan. Yung totoo. So bakit nagkatasa sa isang method na hindi naman nag-work pa na? Next. Condom promotes sexual promiscuity and promotes extramarital and premarital sex. That is documented. You see that in, for example, in countries like Bangkok, nag-distribute sila ng condom, dumami nila yung AIDS nila. In the States, diba? When kids go out dating, minsan yung guidance counselor is clinic, magbibigay kung magdalaga ng condom. So what happens? And young people, there are sexually active. It just doesn't destroy their bodies, it destroys their soul. It destroys their psyche. not knowing how to handle a failed relationship. Girls can think, what's wrong with me? Boys start to learn how to use people. How will they manage when they're married? And at a young age, they're going into sex, right? Yeah. That's what condom does. Next. So condom and how it's used is taught in national sex education. So we're talking about national sex education for our kids. From an anecdotal ito, narinig ko sa mga parents, tuturuan gumamit ng condom na classroom sa mananas, italong, next. Tubal ligation, does always prevent conception because pre-canalization is men. And there's also, when that happens, pre-canalization, the risk of ectopic pregnancy is more. And of course, you have the complications of anesthesia and surgery. Next. So this is how tubal ligation is done. The fallopian tube is severed, is interrupted. Maraming methods. Then next, for men, vasectomy. The passage where the sperm cells pass is also interrupted. So 50% develop anti-sperm antibodies and there is higher incidence of disease. Next. So lutalization or vasectomy, of course, promotes sexual promiscuity and promotes extramarital sex. Kasi wala nang tao na pregnant and hello? Next. So all contraceptive put the woman at risk of being just used as sex object. And it's against the natural moral. So what is the natural moral? The natural moral, the assumption here is people believe there's if you can talk ethics without that assumption, that is might be tricky. But if you think there's a divine power out there, his mind has a plan for all this creation. And so, our mind, because we're human, cannot grasp everything that is in God's mind, otherwise we would be nuts. But God, ginawa niyo pag-iisip natin, na mag-grasp natin yung ibang plano niya. So, malinaw na binigay niya ang plano niya sa atin by figuring it out using our reason. So we can reason out what is right and wrong. Of course, we can make mistakes because we're human. But we have that facility, we have that ability to figure out what is right and wrong. So we know that it's against natural moral. It's not a thing of religion. It's about our humanity. All human beings are governed by the same law. Unless they're not human. It's wrong to kill, it's wrong to steal, and violent crime. People can figure that out. Now, for those of you who believe in revelation, God made sure also theologically that we don't make a mistake about that, and He also revealed it to the humans. So just to make sure that humans don't make a mistake about it, so we can figure out this reason alone, and it will also be discovered in revelation. Next. So the alternative to artificial contraceptives, of course, methods, just to let you know, the whole principle there is knowing when a person is fertile, when the woman is fertile and infertile, and a person, a couple wants to have children, have sex during the fertile period, and if they don't want to have children for a while or permanently, they have sex during the infertile period. So that's the thing about contraceptives. I will now okay, so I'm just saying here that the marriage bill will promote on a wide scale the use of methods of birth control that are harmful physically, as I have shown you, psychologically, as I expressed my views about that, socially, it destroys family, society, and morally. It will use money that can otherwise be better spent in help the poor. Alright, next. As a way of ending, I'm going to show you a short video. This is actually about, this is an American complaining about a section in the Smithsonian that was devoted to Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger founded Planned Parenthood. And she's actually one of the earlier proponents of population control based on eugenics, because her idea was that we should produce a race that is perfect or beautiful. And so, para sa kanila hindi magaganda, kung may kilayang balat, o siguro kinukuhog, o ano, pero meron siyang ganung idea. And this video is complaining why should America honor such a person. And it mentions it quotes a lot of the writings to prove that she's really racist. But you have to connect that she established Planned Parenthood. And the objective is population control. And Planned Parenthood work together now, push this agenda of population control globally.
Federal government already funds hundreds of millions of dollars to Planned Parenthood every year, so it should come as no surprise when it funnels your money to celebrate its founding. The Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery recently opened a new federally funded exhibit that, according to the museum's curator, celebrates women who have challenged and changed America over the past century. Included in the list is notorious liberal feminist Margaret Sanger. The National Portrait Gallery website provides a brief description of Sanger, describing a concerned crusader who fought with the courage of a wounded tiger for the promotion of birth control. What the Smithsonian exhibit fails to mention, however, is that Margaret Sanger founded the largest abortion chain in the country, now known as Planned Parenthood. But the exhibit also fails to explain the racist ideology behind Sanger's promotion of birth control. Many people don't really know what eugenics is. Eugenics is defined as belief in the possibility of improving the qualities of the human species by discouraging reproduction by persons having genetic defects or presumed to have inheritable undesirable traits. Essentially, eugenics is the creation of a master race by controlling who has children and who doesn't. An article appearing in the January 31st, 1922 edition of the New York Times bore the headline, "Mrs. Sanger says Superman is the aim of birth control." If creating a race of Supermen is the goal, who did Sanger believe had genetic defects or undesirable traits that stood in the way? In his book, Birth Control, Facts and Responsibilities, Adolf Meyer quoted an essay Sanger wrote in 1925, entitled The Need of Birth Control in America.
Birth control is not merely an individual problem. It is not merely a national question. It concerns the whole wide world, the ultimate destiny of the human race. In his last book, Mr. H.G. Wells speaks of the meaningless, aimless lives which cram this world of ours. Hordes of people who are born, who live, yet who have done absolutely nothing to advance the race one iota. Their lives are hopeless repetitions. All that they have said has been said before. All that they've done has been done better before. Such human beings clog up the path, drain out the energies and the resources of this little earth. We must clear the way for a better world. We must cultivate our garden.
In 1922, Sanger wrote a book entitled Prohibitive Civilization. In it is a chapter called The Cruelty of Charity, where she blasts programs that provide medical and nursing facilities to slum mothers as insidiously injurious. In the same book, Sanger called for the cessation of charity, for the segregation of morons, misfits, and the maladjusted, and for the sterilization of genetically inferior races. She also argued that organized attempts to help the poor was the surest sign that our civilization has bred, is breeding, and is perpetuating defectives, delinquents, and dependents. The Birth Control Review was Sanger's official publication for the American Birth Control League, and in 1932 she outlined her plan for peace.
The main objectives of groups in our population their choice of segregation or sterilization, and to apportion farmlands and homesteads for these segregated persons, where they would be taught to work under competent instructors for the period of their entire lives.
Sanger's admiration for the eugenics programs in Nazi Germany were well known at the time. In 1933, the Birth Control Review published Eugenic Sterilization, an Urgent Need, by Ernst Rudin, who was Hitler's director of genetic sterilization and the founder of the Nazi Society for Racial Hygiene. In her praise for the eugenics programs in Germany, Sanger called for the implementation of such programs in the United States, specifically targeting African Americans. The following editorial was published in the 1932 issue of the Birth Control Review.
The Negro problem is one of the most complicated and important confronting America. Whatever the ultimate answer may be, such an attitude brings to light the function of birth control as a necessary agency in its solution. The present submerged condition of the Negro is due in large part to the high fertility of the race and disastrously adverse circumstances. Thus, the question arises, to what extent birth control has had a eugenic effect upon the Negro race?
If any question should remain about Sanger's racist agenda, a 1939 letter she wrote to Dr. Clarence Gamble should remove all doubt.
We should hire 3 or 4 colored ministers, preferably with social service backgrounds and with engaging personalities. The most successful educational approach to the Negro is through a religious appeal. We don't want word to go out that we want to exterminate the Negro population. And the minister is a man who can straighten out that idea if it ever occurs to any of their more rebellious members.
Can there be any wonder why Planned Parenthood opens its facilities in poor inner-city neighborhoods populated by minorities? Can there be any doubt that Sanger's philosophy of creating a pure race is what fuels Planned Parenthood's support of embryonic stem cell research? Margaret Sanger was a racist. She's responsible for the millions of babies that have been ethnically cleansed from our country and should not be celebrated by the taxpayer-funded Smithsonian. Please visit the website and contact the Smithsonian